the way we increase the speed of the Ethereum blockchain through these side state channels, this isn't isolated to casinos. Anybody that's looking to increase the speed of the Ethereum blockchain could license our technology from a white label perspective and increase the speed of their platform or whatever their business model is. So they'll be required to pay both upfront fees and return fees in decent.bet tokens. So that's increasing demand and decreasing supply, because every single month, whoever's white labeling our technology is going to have to go out and buy more tokens just to pay the fees. So by having these 4 layers of supply and demand, we feel it's going to have a drastic impact on the available supply, as well as increasing the amount of demand. The more successful we are at balancing that equation, the higher the value of the token will be, and therefore will offer more value back to the investors.
I don't know so much that like one VBET token is like in an extreme situation like €1,000, then it's impossible for normal people to do one spin with that amount. Is it possible to spin with VBET Satoshi?
Correct. Yes, it will be. And so there'll be 2 ways to gamble on the platform. You can either designate the amount that you want to gamble in DBET tokens, which can be split into fractions or into Satoshis of DBETs, or there'll actually be an opportunity for you to select which currency you want to wager in and enter the value of that currency. So if it's GBP and you wanted to wager 50 cents per spin, you don't have to do the calculation on your own and say, okay, I need, 500 Satoshis of a DBET to spin. You would just simply select your currency, GBP, put in 50 cents. It would do the calculation for you and tell you what fraction of a DBET or how many Satoshis of a DBET you would need to gamble in order to move forward. We can never mint any more DBETs. Like everybody locked them up. Then what we would do is we would modify the platform to accept Ethereum. Yeah, and then think about it. If there's no available DBETs to purchase because they're all locked up, what's the value of a DBET? 0 supply. Imagine a token or a cryptocurrency with 0 available supply. I can't even imagine what the value of a DBET would be at that point.
That's sort of like a good problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Great problem. Yeah,
is there anyone in this room that does not want that problem?
Right. Who knows? Thousands of dollars a DBET. I mean, literally huge demand because everybody wants to be a part of the house. That's why it's all locked up and 0 available supply. Get out of here. I mean, you can speak of diamonds, precious metals. There's nothing on earth that exists with that sort of demand and 0 available supply. It would be unprecedented, and the value would represent that. And one of the other things we're going to get into the future of DBET is we're exploring opportunities to actually allow fiat onto the platform. And if we can have, we're very close. It's a complicated scenario, so I don't want to mismanage any expectations or guarantee anything in particular. We're going to speak about it a little bit more here in a second. But if we can accept fiat on the platform, which I'm optimistic. I'm not guaranteeing. I'm optimistic that allows our ability for mass adoption to go exponentially more than if it was strictly related to DBET tokens. If we can accept fiat on the platform, get out of the way, in my humble opinion.
Hi.
Hello.
You've just answered one of my questions about fiat to crypto gateway. The other question was for mass adoption is it going to be an app or is it a website? Is it going to have a www?
At this point, the plans are for it to be an app, both laptop, desktop app, as well as mobile apps.
I feel like you want to give it.
I'm sure you get this question quite a lot, but I was just curious, how do you mitigate the volatility of price change? So, like, for example, in the gaming industry, you place a bet, you know what you're going to get in return. You touched on it earlier, you might get more than you return, but what happens if it goes the other way? Hopefully it doesn't. But if it did, how do you mitigate that, and how do you communicate that to users?
Just to be honest, there's no way to mitigate it, clearly. It's about honesty and transparency that this is the reality of the situation. And, if the benefits are enough for you to wager on the platform based on the transparency, based on the ability to be the house, based on the speed of our games versus other games. If that's motivating enough for you to use the platform, then that's something that you're going to have to take a risk at. If we are successful with mass adoption, like you said, hopefully it doesn't go that way, and in theory it shouldn't go that way. Once people are returning through the house, I think we're going to be pretty consistent positive inflation, but it is a possible scenario for sure.
Thank you.
Cool. So we go ahead, next slide. So when we look at the market analysis for online gaming in general, it's very optimistic. It's very bullish. In 2016, we created this slide. I need to probably get some more updated figures and see what 2017 ended up at. But when we were presenting prior to the new year, 2016 was the most relevant figures, the most recent figures. There was over $45 billion USD wagered each year on online gaming specifically, not even including physical casinos. So over a $45 billion industry is the industry that we're entering. It's estimated to be close to $100 billion over the course of the next 7 years. So the industry is actually expected to double, which puts us in a prime position to capitalize on that trend, because everything is shifting to online, shifting to mobile, et cetera, and moving on. The market research shows that because there's really 3 types of gaming. There's physical casinos, there's online casinos, and then there's the kind of alley bookie casinos, which aren't physical. They're just kind of peer-to-peer type gambling. So when you look at that as a whole, 45% would be the majority, considering there are 3 components. And online, the research shows that the online market is expected to dominate in the next 3 years, 2020. More money will be gambled online than any of the other 2 avenues, which would be physical casinos or peer-to-peer. So we're in a great market that's extremely profitable, that's shifting in the way that we're positioning the company, which is all positive for the business model of Decent.bet moving forward. So what makes Decent.bet so special? And you guys are all familiar with this, I'm sure, but it's really the be the house type aspect. So if you haven't heard the motto before, we have a couple of different mottos: be the player, be the house, be the casino. Our house is your house. Anybody can be the casino and kind of be on that guaranteed winning side of those transactions, which is being the casino. So the house allows users to purchase DBet house credits. So you use DBet tokens and you convert those to DBet house credits or house shares, and that's what actually has you acquires you a stake in the profit sharing aspect, which is that 3-month period that I mentioned before. So 100% of all house profits will be distributed among the house credit holders. The way that distribution happens is 95% is distributed proportionally based on participation. So if you look at the total amount contributed to the house, if you were 5% of the total contribution, you would in return receive 5% of 95% of the total profits generated over the course of that quarter. What we feel creates a little excitement is 5% of the total profits of the casino for the quarter will be given to one lucky winner in our Strike It Witch lottery. So it's quarterly sessions, 4 sessions a year, 4 times a year. One individual will get 5% of the total profits of the casino, which is very exciting. Plus, what an opportunity to impact people's lives is to give them that amount of money in a lottery. And people have phrased it to me that essentially by locking up your tokens, you get a lifetime entry into a lottery. Because as long as you're locked up, you're entered every single quarter without it doing anything additional. So by participating in the house, you have a lifetime entry. As long as DBet exists, you're entered into the lottery over and over and over and over again. And when you look at traditional lotteries, there could be multi-million people, participants involved in that lottery. Whereas with DBet, if you look at how many total token holders there are and how many people participated in the house, it could be a 1 in 10,000 chance to win 5% of the total profits every single session. Again, as long as you're locked up, you get an entry every single quarter, which is very exciting to us. And can't wait for the first winner, because it'll be a fun story to share with everybody that, you know, how much did they win and how much did it impact their life. So good marketing and very cool aspect to it. So something kind of exciting that we think is pretty cool. So the way that the lottery will work is in order to enter into the lottery, you have to lock up a minimum of 1,000 DBets. And that 1,000 DBets gets you an entry into the lottery, gets you one entry. For every 1,000 DBets that you lock up, you get another entry into the lottery. But we capped it at only 5 entries per person. So the max amount of entries somebody could get is 5 entries. The reason we capped it is this whole thing has been based on fairness and offering everybody an equal opportunity to win. And so we would hate for a whale to come in, accumulate, you know, 2 million DBets, have how many entries into the lottery, and just have almost just guaranteed chance of monopolizing that lottery. We feel distributing that opportunity, 5 entries would be the best way to go. Do you have the other microphone? Can you take it back there?
Are the co-founders in that lottery?
No.
So anyone with anything locked down, co-founders on.
Founders are in the lottery. If they were to buy personal debt, founder shares could not be considered an entry into that lottery.
Anything privately entered would be considered in the lottery, but anything locked down, co-founders is not.
Correct. Correct. So, and before you go on real fast, so the way that the lottery will work is everybody that has an entry into the lottery will be assigned a number. Say there's 1,000 participants or entries into the lottery. Every wallet, essentially, because we don't know who you are as individuals, it's all wallet oriented, anonymity of blockchain, is assigned a random number. If it was 1,000 entries, 1 through 1,000, we'll use an RNG, random number generator, to figure out who the lucky number or lucky winner was. And all of those results will be transparent and published on the blockchain, so everybody can verify that it was a fair lottery and it was actually randomly generated, not something that we can manipulate or, you know, steer in direction. So
it says the random number is derived from random.org, but what will happen if that site ever goes down or business?
Sure, RNGs are becoming more and more popular. That's not the only RNG that's available. So we can either develop our own internally or find a realistic alternative. But they don't monopolize the RNG marketplace. So there are other options that are available. Yeah, and we could build it on our own. It's really not complicated. It's just, you know, you look at like a normal lottery, spinning the balls in the little circle. It's essentially what you're doing is shuffling numbers and then pulling one at random and showing everybody that it was at random. It's not complicated technology. We can build it on our own. Another question. Go ahead. We're here first.
Have you applied for any licenses yet?
Yeah, we've applied for multiple licenses. We currently have a gambling license that's at the final stages of approval in Curacao is where the gambling license would be generated. We're also looking for gambling licenses in Dominica, the Sovereign Republic of Dominica, as well as potentially Malta as well. So we'll look for if you guys aren't familiar, we recently engaged one of the biggest, best law firms in the world, particularly in the cryptocurrency space, Perkins Coie. And Perkins Coie represents Facebook, Google, Amazon, Boeing, Bittrex, Coinbase. These are absolute monsters in the space, not just cryptocurrency space, but just business space in general. They represent us, which is a huge privilege. You know, there is an application required in order to retain them. And the fact that they took us on was very humbling for us, that this sort of level of representation would be interested in representing our company. So what we're going to do is look at how those gambling licenses translate over the course of various jurisdictions and make sure that we have whatever license is required to translate over all the available jurisdictions. That does require holding 3, 4, 5, 10 licenses. We will have 3, 4, 5, 10 licenses, and Perkins Coie is the best, in our opinion, to have in our corner to help facilitate that.
Another question. Okay. You said that your 100% profits go back to people up to the holders. How do you define what profit in terms of like growing the company, more marketing costs, more cost? Like, how do you define?
Sure, great question. And can everybody hear the questions when they're asked up here? Okay, so here, yeah, if you could repeat the question, because that is important, and I want people to understand that.
Okay, just that 100% of the profits will go back to people who put their D-bets into the house. How do you define profits? You'll be expanding and growing, and more marketing costs, customer service, and sport in this field is very important. How do you see yourselves like defining profit?
Sure. So what we guarantee to the community is we've raised all this money that is essentially operating capital. We will never take more than 10% of the total profits to cover operating costs. So whatever the total profit is, we're going to take 10% of that to relate back to operations. Whatever remaining operational costs they are is going to come out of the budget through the raise. And then at the point that 10% covers the costs, then we'll take whatever percentage is required to cover the cost. So at some point, it's 10% covers the cost, then that goes to 8%, 7%, 5%. But in order to return as much as possible back to investors, we're going to be coming out of pocket, not from profits, but through the budget that we've raised in order to maximize the return for the investors. Great question, though. We had another one back here, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
How do you stop people having multiple wallets? Is it by IP address or how?
It's really a challenge because we could do IP address, but then people can use VPNs and ultimately disguise their IP address and have multiple IP addresses. It's something specifically when it comes to the lottery and the 5 entries into the lottery, that's where it gets a little sticky. In theory, somebody could manipulate the system and have more entries into the system, but we want to put as many hurdles in the way as possible to make it as unachievable or unfeasible as possible. But in theory, it's something that, there may be a solution down the road. At this point, with VPNs and the availability to disguise IP addresses, the anonymity associated with wallets, it is a challenge, and in theory, somebody absolutely could manipulate that part of the system.
Thanks.
Yep. So white labeled houses, this is something, don't need to elaborate too much on that, but outside companies that are accepted into the platform are allowed to implement their own custom games or adopt their technology through a decent.bet API. All licensing agreements, ongoing fees will be required to be paid in D-bets, creating that additional layer of supply and demand. So again, the thing that's most important about this is it's relevant to all technology related on the Ethereum blockchain, not just casinos. And we've had, as we speak about what we're doing going forward, we've had an immense amount of interest already. People are knocking on our door, almost beating down our door. How do they white label our technology? And we're like, we're not ready yet. We're not even at mainnet. Like, give us a few months, and then we can have these conversations. But the amount of interest, not even kidding, 2 weeks outside of ICL, people reaching out to us saying, how can we white label your technology? This is something that we feel there's an immense amount of interest in, and something that's going to really help drive the value, drive the adoption of the Decent.bet business model and the Decent.bet token, because the interest is crazy. We've been invited to Macau, Hong Kong. We have opportunities in the Netherlands, not just online casinos that want to adopt the technology, but even physical casinos that want to adopt the technology. Some of the things that we've been creative with in relation to the white label solutions and how it could be applied to a physical casino is when it comes to Macau, a large part of their gamblers come from China. One of the things that happens with the Chinese gamblers in Macau is they're restricted with how much money they can travel with. It's like 125,000 USD that they're able to travel with. For large Asian gamblers, particularly in China, 125,000 is like 5 bets. It's nothing to them. So imagine potentially a slot machine that was connected to the blockchain where people could have a decent.bet card, load millions of dollars onto that card, travel with that card, and rather than putting fiat into the slot machine, enter in their decent.bet wallet, access their decent.bet tokens, and cash back out to their wallet. You know, some of these opportunities, you know, they haven't progressed to the point where we're banking on them or counting on them. But the fact that these conversations are already happening and the ideas and the creativity that we're coming up associated with it creates just incredible opportunities.
Hey, thanks guys for coming to the UK. Sorry about the weather. I really appreciate it.
No problem. We forgive you.
Okay.
I came from Panama. It's 90 degrees every day.
I hate you. Okay. Yeah. I was really interested about the white labeling by the gambling industry. 2 things. Your technology is incredibly disruptive. They're not going to want to give away the same amount as you are, but presumably they'll white label and use your API and then give away different percentages. But I hadn't even realized that's something you might offer.
They don't have to adopt our business model. They just have to pay the fees in DBET tokens. Okay, so anybody that white labels our technology doesn't have to do a 100% give back program and be a part of our platform that's 100% give back. What they are required to do is pay the upfront and recurring licensing fees in DBET tokens, which drives supply and demand ratios, positively impacts it, and therefore affects the token value. So you're 100% correct. You know, who else is as crazy as us and wants to give back 100% of the profits of the casino? Nobody. But by creating that additional layer of supply and demand is how it positively impacts the business model.
Right here. Right here.
Just wondered, is there any kind of views on sort of gambling commission from, like, for example, from a UK point of view? Do they have a view on if someone white labeled it, do they have to get a gambling license, or, I mean, how does it work?
I mean, that's going to be something they need to figure out. We wouldn't have any liability associated with the white labeling. Their business model, by licensing our technology, would not associate liability to our company. But if they were going to operate correctly and legally, they would need gambling licenses. Yeah.
You held the UK license, you pass that on to them. So to work in the UK, you'll have to have a UK gambling commission license. Will you be able to pass on that license to these providers as well, so that you're actually offering them an end to the gambling world?
I would need to speak to the lawyers to have 100% confidence in my response, but from what I would assume in my experience in this, which is pretty vast, they would have to have some sort of association with the company, meaning they'd have to be some sort of subsidiary. And then in order for that sort of relationship to happen, it could happen, but it would be complicated because we'd have to vet out their business model, vet out everything that they're doing to make sure that they were operating within local jurisdiction laws and did not create liability back to the platform. So it's something to be incredibly hesitant to allow to happen. But if we could do the proper due diligence and vet everything out, it's something that is potentially possible. I just want to make sure I can hear you, but I want to make sure everyone in the back can hear you as well.
I'm just wondering, do you have a pipeline of potential business partners already in the making, or?
A very large pipeline.
Really?
A very large pipeline.
Can you share a bit more of it?
Yeah, I mean,
and if you're not careful, I'll take your microphone away.
like I've said, we've been invited to Macau.
So when we were in Japan doing our conference, we did a conference in front of 3,000 people. There were some very influential people there. Straight from when we got off the stage, Jed, there was people asking us to hop on a plane and go to Macau.
You remember how we talked about getting bum rushed for the hoodies?
Yeah.
It was a similar experience. some people bum rushing us when we got off the.
Yeah, but we don't say that in a nature or a way to create hype. It was more, the conversations that were happening just to talk about the ideas. And it would be, and like Jed reiterated before, it'd be silly for us to jump on a plane and go talk to individuals regarding these sorts of opportunities when we aren't ready yet. Okay, and it doesn't do us or the investors or the company any favors by putting ourselves in that situation and going and having those conversations. In the likelihood they say, okay, we want to buy it, and we're not ready. So then it makes us look silly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, 3 months we can continue this conversation. We'd rather we'd rather keep them in the pipeline rather than initiate the conversation prematurely. Totally. But like the invitation to Macau, we're looking at, when we get into the future of DBET, acquiring 2 companies that are associated with some of the most famous poker players in the world. They have huge connections to the casinos, and we've had emails back and forth like Scientific Games, where they could potentially bring some of our table and technology to the felt, which means that it's actually in the physical casino. So, I mean, it's been overwhelming, the amount of interest and ultimately what is transpired into the pipeline that we have of interest into the white label technology. It's overwhelming.
And obviously, one of the most humbling things is when you've got professional poker players reaching out to Jed personally, messaging him, emailing him, asking him where he is in the world so they can come talk to him. It's a really good sign.
I spoke to one professional poker player who's won the Aussie Millions Championship. Really good friends and business partners with Phil Hellmuth. I don't know how much you guys know about professional gamblers and some of the more popular gamblers. Daniel Negreanu, Phil Ivey. Spoke to him, and within a week he was on a plane to Panama because he was so anxious to speak.
Got a question? I'm sorry.
Hold on.
When you came up with the idea and got together as a team, did you expect so much interest in the white labeling side?
I did not at all. And it was actually to be honest, the anonymous dad was the one that came up with the idea of the white label solutions. And I was like, yeah, let's throw it in there. I don't know how much interest there's going to be. And I trusted his judgment. One of the things that is kind of our philosophy as a team is we really believe and trust in one another, and he had an immense amount of confidence in the amount of attention that it would gather. So I'm glad that I trusted in him, because it has been one of the most popular aspects of the business model.
When we talk about the white labeling and you've got businesses queuing up to do it, it brings me to think: do you have any current competition within the blockchain industry? And how are you better?
I would say Funfair would be one that would be a competition, because from my understanding of their business model, essentially what they do is provide the tools for you to build your own casino and utilize their technology. The challenge is that goes back to all the barriers of entry. Is you need your gambling license, you need your marketing plan, you need your operational budget, you need your user acquisition, you need all of these things in order to bring the casino to life. How many people want to do that, or would you prefer passive income? I think passive income is much more appealing than grinding out and building your own business. Let us do the work for you and create that income from a passive perspective rather than boots on the ground, elbow grease kind of hard work perspective. And I think that's what differentiates us. The second part that would differentiate us is the speed that we can offer on the Ethereum blockchain that relates back to the user experience. If these games don't operate quickly and in comparable ways to traditional experiences, which is one spin after another, one roll after another, people aren't going to use it. So our creation of these side channels and these state channels that increases the speed and allows for that is another competitive advantage. So both the passive income aspect as well as the speed of our technology.
Sorry, I assume that you've done away with the gas transaction fee?
Yeah. So the way that we do it, and the way that the side channels and the state channels work, is essentially what we're doing is we're not relying on every transaction to be mined individually. We're taking it into a state channel, a side channel, and it's what's called like a session. So you're going to do spin, 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 spin. Say there's 500 spins. That would be 500 individual transaction gas fees. What we're going to do is bundle that into one block and one transaction that requires one gas fee rather than 500 individual gas fees, which significantly, I believe one of these slides goes into it, significantly lowers user cost from a gas transaction verification perspective, which is a huge advantage.
Yeah, so obviously we can see how your proposition is unique as it stands, but with the white labeling, and if you're going to established gambling companies and white labeling your offering to them, are you not then, giving less reason for people to come to your website, your platform?
Fair point, for sure. We'd analyze their individual business models, and if they wanted to white label it and give 100% of the profits back, we probably wouldn't let them. So we would look at the key differentiators and how much conflict of interest it would have to our business model. And the good news is that we get to select and choose who's allowed to white label our technology. And if we felt it was a direct competitor that didn't have the advantages that we do, we probably wouldn't allow them to. If somebody offered me tomorrow, I want to mirror your business model, I'm going to give 100% back, let us license your technology, I'd say no. Because I would make sure we still were positioned in a way that was competitively advantageous from a user acquisition perspective, which allowed us to compete against them. But good question, great question.
Clocking up some miles here.
I'm glad. I love this. I love getting these questions out and clarifying everything in your guys' minds.
Is there any way you can patent or copyright this side chain side of things, or could anyone in theory do the same?
Patents are very complicated, and you have to go through. You can't just say this is patentable or not patentable. It goes through an extensive process of a first round where they typically everything fails on the first round, and then they come back with questions that you need to answer and solve. Then it goes back into a second round of approval, and it can take a year process. But I feel a lot of the things that we're doing are potentially patentable. When we get into the future and some of the things that we're working on, not just the side and state channels being patentable, but we also have some unique games that we're looking to patent, and some unique ways to create unique interaction with the games. For example, we're looking at developing potentially some dice that could be rolled in person that would have microchips in them that would communicate back to the blockchain. So rather than just, when it comes to dice games, rather than just clicking a button of roll the dice, you'd actually have the dice in your hand, and it would be like augmented virtual reality where people can play across the world with each other, but be spinning firsthand, be rolling firsthand in front of them. We're working on those prototypes now.
No more technology questions.
Too much secret sauce. Much secret sauce.
Jed, we spoke about this.
Angelus, if you're watching, don't copy us.
I watched, there's a series called The Defiant Ones about Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre and how they created beats. And they took it from nothing to whatever it was sold for, 100% by his music industry contacts, or their music industry contacts and influencers. Bearing in mind what you said about poker players, would it, without, you can't obviously say whether you're going to do something or not, but would it be a strategy of yours that you will use influential people within the gambling industry, particularly like poker players, in order to massively get the word out? So that's not a like you would, in theory you would, is what I'm asking.
Yes, and it's never, I don't know if you guys know the old saying, background is sales. When you talk about a potential deal happening, it's never in until it's in, until they sign on the dotted line. But these deals are like that far away from some of the most famous professional gamblers in the world. And a key part of that is not just the unique IP of the games that they've generated, but the sponsorship or marketing opportunities associated with having these the best of the best support the platform and publicly express their interest and even potential partnerships into the platform.
And I don't want to create, like when Jed speaks about these sorts of things, we don't want to create hype or anything. Like, but these are, you're asking us the questions and we're being open and honest with you. These are individuals that we have not gone out and sourced. They've come to us based on what they know on the platform. So once again, some interesting people have reached out to Jedediah to come meet with him personally.
And they email me daily saying, I'm having withdrawals from being away from you. Your energy and your positivity inspires me. It's like, if we work this out, I want a clause in my contract that all the days I'm away from you that I get additional compensation.
That's a true story. That's a true story.
I can just prove it. They love us. They love our business model. And it comes back to the integrity and the morals of the company of what we're looking to do is everybody wants the majority of people want to leave behind a legacy that actually impacts something that's bigger than themselves. And this creates an incredible opportunity for people to not just improve their lives, but they improve hopefully thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people's lives. And that you don't get many chances in life to do that.
I guess my question is building on what you just spoke about. But if you're to look at the gambling industry as a whole, specifically in this country, I would say that most large gambling companies make their money from pretty much punters, and I would say there's a large difference between your average punter in the street and perhaps people who at this moment are, even though crypto is growing, people who have Ethereum accounts or whatever. So my question for you is, obviously as you grow, particularly in this country, you're going to be looking to take customers from the well-established, successful operators. However, a lot of those customers, they may love casino, they may love betting, but this entire world seems cognitively quite alien to them. And so my question to you is, how do you actually attract those customers? How do you attract these people who spend lots of money gambling, but this all looks incredibly confusing to them?
Definitely a challenge, and when we look at there's two scenarios that could happen with that. The ultimate perfect world scenario for us is our ability to figure out how to accept fiat onto the platform, which is really the goal. If we can figure that out, get out of the way, because then there is no education or conversion required to get them over. That isn't guaranteed though. So it would be a dual part marketing strategy where first we'd attack the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit would be the people that are already familiar with cryptocurrency and getting the crypto users to adopt the platform first, and then marketing outside of that to the people that aren't familiar with cryptocurrency. The thing that would attract them and where we would look at it as a reason to convert would be based on the fairness and the transparency that's verifiable through our blockchain. That if you are a serious gambler and it's something that you really enjoy, I would assume, and I'm a gambler myself, I would consider it, and it would depend on how foreign or how challenging it would be for me to actually get in. But if I had two options, use the traditional comfortable gaming method where I'm guessing what my odds are, or potentially adopting something new that actually gave me a verifiable, fair chance of winning, I would definitely be interested in understanding how I could be a part of what was verifiable. And then you look at it as its dual part. Okay, so now I can convert you not only as a gamer, but if I can educate you on cryptocurrency, I can also create the opportunity for you to be the house as well, which is non-existent in the traditional world. So I have two benefits to you. I can offer you fair odds that are publicly transparent and verifiable, but I can also allow you for the first time in the world to actually be the casino. And I feel that is a motivation to start driving that demand and that adoption.
If you start accepting fiat, will that be once the debets have run out, once they've been everyone purchased?
No, we would offer that as soon as it was available, and we feel that it wouldn't. There's two things. Like if we were to accept Ethereum immediately, then now we're double dipping in cryptocurrency, where cryptocurrency users can now pick and choose what they're affecting from a supply and demand ratio. But if it's this pot of cryptocurrency people are forced to use DBET, and then this pot of people that don't know cryptocurrency and are not going to use the platform if they don't have a way that they're comfortable with, then we're not competing with ourselves, right? So we would allow that immediately.
I know you said it was very early on in you looking at fiat, but I was just wondering, in terms of the main obstacles that you face in implementing fiat, is it more of a tech issue or more of a legal issue?
It's more of a legal issue, but the information that we have and the strategy that we're using, this is something that unfortunately I cannot disclose because it's our golden goose if we can actually make it happen. I'm extremely optimistic. Extremely optimistic, no guarantees, not hype. Please don't run to the bank and say they're accepting fiat, this is going to explode. This is not what we want to do or give the impression that's going to happen. But we are extremely, extremely optimistic. And we have spoken at length with Perkins Coie, which is we've spoken about it, vetted legal firm. And it is not far-fetched at all. It's very possible. And it's something that we just need to work out the legal, but go back to your question, it is more of a legal thing, not a technological thing. It's something that even with speaking Perkins and Coie, it's not just our opinion, it's a universal opinion based on all the counsel, guidance, advisors that we have, that based on the strategy that we're using, it's very possible and very likely.
Just to echo that as well, we always want to make sure that we are going to deliver news based on something that we're doing, that it's factual and true. You know, we don't want to put something out, you know, in our Slack community or out on Twitter or Facebook or however we decide to do it through social media channels that, oh yeah, we're getting a banking license, but it's not actually factual. And that's why we're aggressively working behind the scenes with the lawyers to make sure things are moving to the right so that we actually can deliver.
You'll hear me disclaim it over and over again. This is not guaranteed. This is something we're working on because, again, going back to, I think, the very beginning of the presentation, we want to under-promise and over-deliver. People even in the community said, why don't you share more news about what could potentially happen? And it's like, we don't want to share something to pump the coin and hype the coin and have only disappoint. Then how do we look? We look like jerks that, you know, made stuff up that wasn't possible or wasn't likely just to get people excited and to motivate people to, you know, buy more or make their first purchase or whatever it may be. We don't share this news. We don't want to mislead. We don't want to create false hype. We want to speak about facts and reality and where things really are. And that's why you'll hear us again and again disclaim that it's something we're working on. We feel optimistic about it, but absolutely no guarantees. But we will continue to provide updates. And as you guys ask questions, we are transparent, like the blockchain is, and you know we're gonna answer your questions. I can't take every question in here and say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that right now. You know, that'd be a lot of fun for everybody. We want to share with you guys, but we want to share it in a way that's honest and that's not creating false reality, but letting you know where it stands today. Who knows where it'll be tomorrow.
Are there any plans for hardware wallet support, like Ledger? Hardware wallet support. Are there any plans?
At this point, no.
Future plans, maybe?
At this point, no. But it's definitely something we would consider. I mean, I hold tokens myself, and if I can't put it on my ledger, I almost don't want to own it because I don't like things being in hot storage. I want everything in cold storage. So if it's not ERC compliant for Bitcoin, I almost don't want to own it because I want to get it off the internet and onto my cold storage devices. So I believe it's a big challenge in the industry. We have higher priorities at this point to focus on, but if we ever got to the point where we could solve that, 1,000,000%, even for my own sake, I want to solve it. So yeah, it's definitely something that's possible. Nothing we've spoken about up to this point.
Hi. We've all seen the effect that rumours of regulation, particularly in Far East market, own crypto. Is that something that you worry about in terms of the impact on the business?
Not worry about it all. The Asia Pacific is a huge market. The big, subjective countries, China, the elephant in the room, China. We love Japan, and we focus heavily on Japan as we get into some of the future of DBET. We have a huge focus on Japan. We have a whole marketing plan to roll out and specifically target Japanese because they are so crypto friendly, and they've adopted it to the point where they've legalized it as a national currency. So there's plenty of opportunities in the Asia Pacific to grow the business, excluding China. Obviously, we'd like China to be in the picture, but a $45 billion industry, we could get $1 billion a year. That doesn't require China. Win, yeah, like your style. Yeah. and in my mind, it's not subjective. It's win, but I gotta shut my mouth because it's under promise over achieve.
So we're just going to push forward a little bit. Thank you for the questions. It's really valuable that we get your questions so we can answer them because, like I said in the beginning of the night, it's all about you guys understanding more about Decent.bet and understanding the philosophy and the business model and the way forward. And we will go into a little bit more about the way forward at the end of the slide, but I did want to get through the slides. So we'll just go through the DBET budget, which is something Jed has already touched on briefly, but we'll just go into it a little bit more.
So as you guys are probably aware of, the launch of the casino will include 3 components: sportsbook, slot machines, and lottery. Not just the lottery of the 5%, but just the traditional lottery as well. And the house aspect. Those are all in the testnet phase, as well as our wallet has been released with multiple upgrades and another upgrade coming soon. So our technology is advancing and progressing. Amazing. The next step is launching in our mainnet, which means the casino and the company would actually be live and we'd be able to generate revenue. The casino would be open for gamblers. Outside of Bitcoin, can anybody think of a coin that the average Joe could use? How can you spend your Neo? Love Neo. Neo, I love you. How would you spend your Neo? How can you spend your Neo? How can you spend your ADA? How can you spend your ADEX? How can you spend your, tell me how the average person could actually have a utility for that coin. Anything but Bitcoin. One coin that the average person could use. Not familiar with it. Dash, touche. Okay, so aside from a currency-based coin, fair enough. I didn't phrase my question appropriately.
Utility, a utility token, right?
Touche. Outside of a currency-based token, and even if you could think of one or two, and please share if you can think of it.
On most of the altcoins like Growy and things like that.
I don't know that they have actual adoption yet. I lived in California for a brief period of time and was a part of the whole green rush, saw it all firsthand.
Like kitties with
Crypto kitties. So the average person could buy a crypto kitty with Ethereum.
Chris has 2 crypto kitties.
But think about that for a second. Maybe one or two, a handful. Can anybody name a handful? The average person can use DBET tokens and the company can drive revenue. How many cryptocurrency companies can do that? And how many cryptocurrency companies are evaluated from a coin market cap perspective in the billions of dollars with no everyday utility? Wait until DBET has an everyday, 12, 13, 14. How many? DBET will be a revenue generating average Joe everyday utility token, which is almost non-existent in the market today. And that'll happen this quarter, according to our roadmap. That's crazy.
One thing I want to quickly touch on, and you can elaborate on this. Did you say take all my money? All right. Where's your wallet at?
It's online on DBET.
We got you in the connection. A lot of people I see, they text us messages, they contact us. You see it on Facebook. I can't wait to be a part of a house. A lot of people cannot wait to be a part of a house. But I get this feeling that the perception is that the day that the casino opens, it's like a full-fledged casino. Everyone can just run in and be the house. And I want to just clear that matter up.
Everyone can be the house, but we're not going to have 10,000 users day one generating $5 million in revenue with these over-the-top incredible returns. We want to always manage people's expectations. My mentors taught me one of the most important things in life is appropriately managing people's expectations. Everybody, you have to be realistic and understand that this business needs to grow, and it will grow over time. If you're in DBET for a quick flip, yeah, we're going to see some ups and downs, and there's going to be some opportunities where it runs. But from the house return perspective, we have to build the user base. And if you can have the patience and you can have the foresight, and you want to acquire DBETs and build your stack and have as much stake into the house as possible for when those users come, and especially if we can adopt fiat like we've spoken about, it's going to grow at an amazing rate. But we do ask you all, because we don't want to disappoint you, to be realistic with your expectations. At day one, we're not going to have 10,000 users on the platform. We're going to have to grow the business. But over time, it's super disruptive. Like I said, how many cryptocurrency companies today can generate revenue, have an actual business that drives profits? I get passionate, forgive me. Generates profits and has an everyday utility for the average Joe. You have to see the vision. You have to believe in the vision.
It's part of the community.
Totally.
Exactly.
And in Slack, frequently people bring up is like, people are like, when is the next exchange listing? When is this happening? When is this happening? And then we have some amazing members in Slack that say, let's all do our part as well as a community. If you see Jed or Kurt or Chris or Sven or whoever post in CCT, please like the post. Please share the post. Please comment on the post. Help the more comments, the more likes, the more those stay at the top of people's news feeds, the more attention it's going to garner, and help us grow the community as much as you guys can. Hopefully you're confident in our actions up to date, and we don't look to change how proud we make you guys. If anything, we're going to strive to make you more proud. And I promise you, the same level of effort that has gotten us to a testnet phase in a matter of 3 months, which how many companies are in testnet, will ultimately be in mainnet with this quarter, drive revenue, generate profits, all of that effort. We're going to put that same effort, that same attention to detail into user acquisition as we can, but it's not going to happen overnight. And please, if you're in this for the long run, you're a DBET holder, you're a DBET believer, do everything you can to help grow the community, because that all just benefits us all that much more. So keep an eye out for posts, like, comment, share.
I hope that's clear. It's not like a new Marks and Spencer's opens today and everyone just walks in and starts shopping, right? So it has to grow and evolve over time. So hopefully we've clarified that a little bit more, and it's our main focus to grow this and scale this as quickly as possible for the community.
And look at the rate that crypto's growing. When I got into crypto, the total market cap was under $20 billion. What are we at today? $600 billion, $500 billion in a period of the last 12 months. It's gone from 20 billion to as high as 700 billion, I think. That's only going to exponentially increase, because as soon as some person finds out about it, once you got into crypto and were successful at it, how many people did you start to tell about it? And it's like that. I don't know if you guys have seen Wayne's World or whatever. It's like, and they tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people. It's going to grow exponentially over time, and all of that from user acquisition perspective, yada, 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 is going to help us grow the company.
Hey, I just wanted to say, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
For the whole thing, but also for your decision not to sell to 20 people.
Thank you.
I find half the problem with the fiat system is money goes to money. And trying to break out the poverty trap with $100, $1,000, you can't do it, but people have got millions they spend millions on.
Thank you.
It's quite wrong. Secondly, I really like I speak of experience where I live is not well, but anyway. Secondly,
and we capped our ICO, and we weren't greedy, and I don't believe in uncapped ICOs. Thank you very much.
And secondly, are we going to see somebody at the World Series, the D-Bet hoodie soon?
I would say absolutely. We floated. That's what I mean.
These questions.
If it's me in the World Series with the D-Bet hoodie on, that's what'll happen. But especially with the exposure to poker players, I mean, I feel that's something that's just absolutely inevitable. It's something that, I mean, I love. I'm passionate about poker. It's my favorite casino game because I control the odds to some degree. So a personal goal of mine that if I ask to come out of my D-Bet wallet, like all the slot machine winnings are coming out of my D-Bet wallet because Kurt's not giving up any, then you know, I'd fund somebody going to the World Series to wear a D-Bet hoodie. So yeah,
There's been more than one discussion. Let's just put it that way, right?
a personal goal of mine. And like I said, it was me funding myself or me funding an individual. Do some lottery that whoever wins the lottery, I'll fund them to the World Series. I wouldn't hesitate. Yeah. The exposure, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of stuff tonight. We're taking you from the start to where we are now. The next slide is we're basically capturing what we're going to be doing we call it our look ahead. So we're always running like a 2-3 week look ahead where we're knuckling down, making sure we've completed what we said we were going to do according to our roadmap and hitting our milestone and our goals. So a couple of the bullet points that we have here now, we're just going to elaborate and drill down a little bit more into some of the stuff that's up and coming. Chris is going to elaborate on some other stuff.
Chris, then if you want to come up here. We're going to drag Sean up here at some point, so we might have to carry him up here because. But yeah, we want to show some things that are coming up. We're going to speak about some specific topics here, and then we'll bring Sean up. Hopefully his laptop isn't too hard to connect, and show you some of the designs that he's been working on. That'll be the evolution of the website to be more of a front-facing, user-friendly website from a gambling perspective rather than the traditional ICO informative website that we have up now. But yeah, go ahead and.
So like every day,
if you could give me a break for a topic or two, I'm gonna sneak out to the restroom. So excuse me.
So every day, you know, we're being contacted by people about reporters wanting to write news articles, ask us questions. There's lots of I don't know if you're seeing, but there's lots of meetups and conferences. They're just exploding across the world. And one of our partners, Blockchain Labo, are constantly marketing all through Asia, South Korea. They're constantly setting up conferences. So we're being contacted every day to do more and more conferences on a grander scale compared to what we're doing today, to educate people about Decent.bet. And Japan was just an incredible event. Jed and I spoke on stage in front of 2,500 people, and right after that, we had our little hub, and it just exploded because people sat here and understood the business model and they wanted to be a part of it. So it's growing all the time, and that's one of the reasons why we're in London this week, is because tomorrow we're at a conference, the London 2018 ICO conference. Is that the title? Yeah. We're going to be presenting there, and I think there's 1,000 people at that particular conference. Yeah, and then we're off to Amsterdam to do another one and a couple of other meetups. So we're constantly on the road doing this, but at the same time we're working day and night building the platform. So the expansion into Europe, doing meetups and conferences in London, that's the things that we're doing over the next 7 days. And then after that, I finally get to go home after 2.5 months. My wife and kids are on the road with me at the moment, so I'm looking forward to going home.
I'm going to miss them.
Hats off to my wife for putting up with it for 2 months. So I'm just going to let Sven just touch on the London and European meetups and just some of the stuff that we're looking to do in Europe as well.
There you go. Look at the fact that we're indeed looking for an expansion in Europe. One of my tasks will be looking for conferences, looking for the expansion of our network. And the Netherlands at this moment is a very blockchain-friendly area. And actually, we're kind of having an office in Amsterdam as well. Yeah, it's like very interesting. There are a lot of conferences going on, as Kurt already said, like on Monday and on Tuesday, upcoming week, we will have like the biggest conference organized in the Netherlands to date. So around like 1,000 people. So a lot of businesses will be there. Actually, official parties will be there as well. The AFM, it's like the financial market legalizer, and even the Dutch, the main Dutch bank is there as well. So they will kind of elaborate on all kind of questions regarding blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies and overall. So it's a very interesting market, Europe. Next to Asia, it's the biggest online gambling market in the world. So I think there's a lot to gain in Europe.
Thanks, Vin. A lot of questions that we get asked daily, whether it be people messaging me, I wake up with hundreds of messages every morning, so does Jed, so the rest of the team, Slack especially, is listing on exchanges. Now, any company can go out and just try and list on as many exchanges as possible to create volume, pay the fees, but there's also sometimes a strategy behind what exchanges you also list on. Okay, so Chris Hensley, the VP of Marketing, takes care of all of our listing on the exchanges. And I'm going to let him just recap on what exchanges we currently are listed on and what we're focusing on as far as listing on exchanges.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. You may know we're currently listed on Cryptopia and Yobit, and like every other ERC20 token, Ether Delta. Yeah. Ether Delta.
We didn't ask for it. They gave it to us.
Right. So it's really, really important to get exposure and volume to be on exchanges, of course. So we do have one that's a little teaser that should be here very soon, and we have several in the works. But as you can imagine, the exchanges are swamped, not just with people that want to list their coin or token on the exchange, but with new applicants and applicants wanting to upgrade their accounts to verified accounts. And they just can't keep up. In fact, Binance shut down all new registrations recently, as you may know, and then they've opened it up, a few hours a day. So Bittrex is probably going to be delisting coins, is most likely. So it's a challenge, no doubt. It's probably my biggest challenge. And if anybody in here has access to an exchange or has relationships, find me.
He refers to dealing with exchanges as similar to cutting your eyeballs. So.
Yeah. I always say that. It's really tough. What's that? Well, Qcoin's one. I've got an email and with somebody internally that we're communicating with, so it would be fantastic to be on Qcoin. The last 24 hours, Qcoin's volume was at number 29, and I only expect that to increase quickly. HitBTC was number 10. We're looking at anyone that we can get the opportunity with. So it's very important to us. Let's put it that way. It's very, very important to us, right?
Just to reiterate, you don't just fill out a piece of paper and submit it to these exchanges and then on Monday they ring you and go, you're on. It's not like that. And I know the reason why I joke about it is because people have this assumption that we're just sitting around playing cards, not listing on exchanges. And the messages you get is like, why are you not on the exchange? You're listed on Cryptopia. Get on Bittrex. It does not work like that. Okay, so I just want to reiterate that and make a real strong standpoint on it, that we work day and night across all facets of the company, and exchanges is a top priority for not only us, but for the investors in the community. It's just not as simple as switching the lights on and getting listed on these exchanges. But, we push all day long.
What does it take?
Say that again? Sorry, what are you going to say?
What does it take to get on the exchanges?
So what does it take to get on the exchanges? Well, let's look at Binance, for instance, right?
$1.5 million.
That's not even guaranteed from an application fee. The application fee can vary. Secondly, there's thousands of applicants to get listed on Binance, and that's coming from the lawyers, the feedback to us. There's thousands of applicants that want to get listed. So it's like anything. Exchanges start to cherry pick who they want on their exchange. They want the most volume at the end of the day, right? The more volume, the more money that they make. So if I'm the guy and it's my responsibility and I've got thousands of applications across the desk, what do you think I'm going to do? List them all? Or do you think I'm going to just walk through and suss out who I want and da-da-da-da-da? But they can't just list everyone overnight as well. There's a process that you have to go through.
You have to set up wallets associated with each account. There's technical requirements. There's a queue of all the approvals that have already happened. creating the wallets associated with those ones, the approval process, yada, yada, yada. And one key focus of ours, aside from probably the exchanges that you're most familiar with, is we're really vested into figuring out how to get listed on Japanese exchanges. And as you go into each individual jurisdiction, there's different laws and different requirements for each jurisdiction. So we're working multiple angles and multiple geographical areas to get the exposure that we feel is most beneficial to the investors ultimately and to the platform. But we have several in the queue, and like he's working day and night, and we're all working day and night to feed him more leads to help him not get any sleep at all. And honestly, we're working as hard as we can. I would say we do anticipate more exchanges, at least one, if not a couple, coming on in the near future, which, you know, month-ish, you know, it's not the next 2-3 days. But we are getting traction. We are moving the ball forward. The thing that a lot of people realize a lot of people don't realize is that with a lot of these things we're working with third-party entities, the exchange being a third-party entity. We have to do everything that we need to do on our end, but we also have to wait for them. Like he said, we don't send out an application and Monday we have an email back from them. Sometimes it's 3 weeks before we get an email back from them. Sometimes we have to ping them 3, 4, 5, 6 times to get a response. And when you're dealing with third parties, the timing of it is out of your control because they are requirements on their end that they have to do. And it's not just simple, quick stuff.
Is there any more that we could be doing as a community to help kind of raise awareness?
That's a great question. So there may be a couple coming up where we actually go to community vote. So when we do that, we're going to need people to be registered on that exchange. And for instance, KuCoin, which you mentioned, they don't just let anybody vote. You have to have a balance on there, an account, and you have to have transactions. So when that time comes, if we could use that, we'll certainly be sharing that across our social channels. So Slack, Facebook, Twitter, we'll be mentioning, look, we're up for vote on whatever platform. Please get the word out. We'll definitely market around that. Good point. It is. It's that community coin, right? Yeah, exactly.
You guys should take a look in the Robinhood exchange. It's a new one, and it's focused on zero fee trading. And yeah, it's only around 6 weeks old. It just started listing their first coins, so maybe now you got an easy chance before it gets big.
Do me a favor, grab one of Chris's cards before you leave, and if you could email him the name of that exchange, just so we're going to have a million conversations tonight. We're going to have a million thoughts flowing through our head. We appreciate the suggestion, and we're anxious to look into it. If you could do us a little bit of a solid and just grab one of Chris's cards and email him a friendly reminder, that'd be greatly appreciated. We'd love to, and help us help the community by giving us a little reminder if you could. Thank you.
So one of the other things that Jed has touched on a couple of times now is acquiring intellectual property for new and upcoming games. So I'm going to let Jed just touch on that a little bit more, but what Jed's not going to do is go into the actual deep detail on the games.
Stand close and kick me if I say anything I'm not supposed to. We have an opportunity with, like I said, some of the most famous gamblers in the world to acquire the IP rights to custom games that they have developed. They've created unique angles on games that take, for example, traditional dice games where you would use dice, but actually create a custom decks that can replace the dice. They create different strategies to it. One of the games that I'll speak a little more into without mentioning the name of it is a chess game where you actually roll dice. And when you think about chess pieces, there's 6 chess pieces: a pawn, a rook, a knight, a bishop, a king, a queen. So you build a dice with each individual piece on one side of the dice. So rather than moving the chess pieces that you would like to move, you can only move what you roll, which forces you to spread your pieces out more to make sure no matter what you roll, you have a move to be able to make. Plus, you want to make sure you don't lose all your pieces, because if you roll pieces that you don't have, then you don't get to make a move. So it's just different types of spins on traditional games. Another aspect of the types of games they're developing is where you can make one bet and by one roll of the dice have the outcome of 3 or 4 different games decided based on one wager. So you can incorporate a number of different games into one roll, which for addicted gamblers that want to just get action in, it allows them to create more excitement for themselves by making one roll and having that determine the outcome of multiple bets rather than an individual bet. So it's one of the things that'll help us from like a user acquisition perspective is being unique and offering things that aren't available on other platforms. And so by offering these different spins and these different types of approaches to traditional games that aren't available in other areas, if people actually enjoy the game, we would be the only place that they could play those games. So we're looking at acquiring 2 different companies that really, I would say, you know, we're at the 90-yard line, if you understand that analogy with these acquisitions. So nothing is ever guaranteed. It's not in until it's in. But this is something to understand the current state of the progress. This is at the latter stages of finalizing. But again, anything can happen. It's not in until it's in. If it does happen, it does give us some unique offerings that aren't available in other areas.
So onboarding,
is that okay?
Just.
Okay. Thanks.
So onboard. So did you have a question?
So obviously the new types of games will make up a portion of the entire games that you can play at decent bet. But do you have a relationship with a company who are gonna produce for you like slots and blackjack and stuff, or are you making that yourself as well? Or?
We're developing all of those games internally.
Okay.
Which leads into the next point is onboarding new developers. So currently we have several developers on board, and Adrian Scott, who unfortunately could not be here this evening, is tirelessly interviewing full stack and Solidity developers.
Is anyone in here not familiar with Adrian Scott? Not familiar.
A proper raise your hand.
Okay. So co-founding investor of Napster. Huge success that was peer-to-peer sharing of music is ultimately what it was. He created the technology behind Rise, which was the first peer-to-peer social networking platform prior to Facebook, prior to LinkedIn, prior to Friendster. He developed the very first peer-to-peer social networking platform. That technology ultimately influenced Friendster and then also influenced Facebook as well. He has a patent related to blockchain exchanges that's already been approved. So he owns a patent related to blockchain technology. Gentleman's an absolute genius. He's the senior director of our technology. So he is in charge of our technology, and the guy is a genius. He speaks PhD in mathematics at the age of 20. He's been coding since the age of 8. He's currently in his 40s. I won't throw him under the bus in that regard. But over 30 years, he's been coding technology. He speaks, I think it's 5 or 6 different languages. This guy is a genius. And he has his own Wikipedia page. What's that? Too smart. Yeah, too smart. You can Google Adrian Scott, and you can see his background. It's crazy.
He's also an actor.
He's also an actor. He's been in movies. He's been in a few movies. He's been in TV shows. When it was probably June or July, we started looking for our CTO/Senior Director of Technology, and it's a challenge to find people that are up to date with technology from a blockchain perspective, Solidity, full stack devs, this sort of thing, to have the ability to scale development teams, have experience with startups that know how to build a team, train a team, grow a team, et cetera, et cetera. I couldn't have imagined we would get fortunate enough, blessed enough to find a gentleman like Adrian Scott to come onto our team. It's interesting how he actually came on board through a mutual friend of his and ours. Adrian and I didn't know one another, but through a mutual friend, he ran a company called Coder Buddy, which you can actually outsource your coding to. So my friend that knew Adrian said, let me introduce you to Adrian. He might be able to connect you to developers, or you might be able to outsource some of your development to him. I was on the phone with him for 30 minutes. He said, I want the job. We're not outsourcing this. I'm not referring you to anybody. This is disruptive. This is amazing. I want the job. And that was the last thing I expected to happen from the phone call. I was hoping for a referral, outsource opportunity. 30 minutes into the call, I want the job. And it was humbling to say the least.
And then I got the next phone call.
You won't believe what just happened.
Yeah. So we are onboarding more developers. It is a task finding the right skill set. And the more developers that you bring on, the quicker you can get the platform and product out there. So we are, Adrian's working tirelessly to get the right skill set on board as well.
The thing you have to realize is, like, even if they touch the website ties to the wallet. If they screw something up, or even if they're not moral and put malware into the website somewhere that could potentially affect the wallet or something like that, it creates this huge exposure and a huge liability for the DBEC community. So they need to be vetted out, not just from a capabilities perspective, but they need to be vetted out from a background moral perspective as well. So it's not just finding somebody that has the skill sets, it's finding somebody that has the skill sets, values, integrity to build this in a way that protects the community. And we are ultra sensitive to making sure that you guys never have a regret by being associated with DBET, and a responsibility to make sure we don't create exposure. And we do not take that lightly. If anything, we probably are overly cautious related to it, then undermine the importance of not just skill sets, but values, integrity, these sort of things as well. So,
very good question. Geographically, does it matter where a full stack developer is based? No. Not at all.
So no, it doesn't matter where they're located. If you guys by chance have any networks, guys or gals, ladies in the back, don't want to disregard you, guys or gals have any connections to potential developers, pretty please let us know. We're looking for full stack devs, and the icing on the cake would be a full stack dev with experience in Solidity.
So currently testnet is being rolled out, and ultimately we're pushing towards getting to mainnet as per our roadmap. Jed, you can just touch on how the testnet's being rolled out and how far we are away from wrapping that up.
Sure. So currently the testnet, one thing about it is it needs to be hosted on an instance, which right now requires a Geth node to be set up. And setting up a Geth node is not the easiest thing in the world. It's very complicated. So we have many members in the community actively testing the technology, but here in the next 2 weeks-ish, we're gonna set it up in a way that doesn't require the need to set up a Geth node. It'll be simple for anybody to be able to get onto the testnet. So keep your eyes out on Slack, Facebook, social media, newsletters, emails, etc. For the update that doesn't require Geth nodes. And the more testers we have, the better, because the idea of the testnet is there's phases. So you have your alpha technology, which is for internal testing. For internal testing, we have 3, 4, 5 people testing the technology at one time. The purpose of the test net is to get hundreds, if not thousands, of people using it simultaneously to make sure that there's no scalability issues. So if you guys are interested in the technology, you'd like to try the technology, please keep your eyes open for when that GEF node requirement is removed. And we would love your assistance and feedback in testing the technology for 2 reasons. Not just to measure the scalability of it to make sure that there's no bugs while it's being used on a mass level, but also feel free to provide impact like, hey, it might be a little more user-friendly. If be a little user-friendly if you were to put this button here, or when I tried to do that, it was a hair confusing for me, and it might be better from a UX user experience perspective if you did this. You know, we're an open book, and we would love your feedback to make sure that the UX, the UI, and the scalability is world class. And that's another way that you guys can help, is testing the technology and not being shy about the kind of feedback that you provide. We would love to hear your thoughts as to how to make the technology world class, second to none, best in the biz. That's the goal. I'm a competitor and I played sports my entire life. I think we're full of competitors across the board. I want to win. You know, the goal with the platform is to be the best. And the more feedback we have, the more information you guys share with us, the more suggestions you give us, the better we'll be. And we are all ears. So pretty please share your thoughts and insights.
I'm just conscious of time because we've got some stuff that we want to do after here with the
you guys want to play some slot machines, right?
Right. So we have touched on white label solutions. So we're just going to touch on 2 more things, and then we're going to wrap up the presentation. So as Jed explained earlier on, and right from the get-go when we started Decent.bet, there was always this burning urge, what else can we add? Not only are we giving 100% back, not only are we doing a lottery, not only are we locking up our tokens, what else can we do? And we decided to create a charity, which is called Decency.
So it's teaching Jed how to moonwalk, because we're into Michael Jackson Thriller, and I just cannot get it down.
So, you know, the charity aspect has been, you know, a very big part of Jed's life. And I know some of the other team have been involved in charities in their previous life. Hand on my heart, I have actually not been a part. And it's one thing that I've always wanted to be a part of. So we have created that as part of our business model. So I don't know if you want to quickly touch on that.
Sure. So the way that when we initially minted the tokens and we went to ICO, 70% was sold at the ICO, 10% went to establish the house, 2% went to bounties, 18% went to bounty shares. The 10% that was used to establish the house will only be used if needed. And so what that means is that the community's funds that establish the house will be the only thing that funds the house unless it's not enough. And the reason that is we are not here to make profits off of the profitability of the business model, but we have to have a fund to ensure that the casino has the bankroll required to operate. So that's why we put this safety net in that was 10% of the total shares to bankroll the house if needed. But if the community's funds are enough to bankroll the house, we don't want to include any of that 10, because ultimately it would dilute your returns, right? Because there would be this additional funds in there that weren't required that spread the profits out even further. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. But if any profits are generated from the house, from the founder's share of the house, 10% of the profits that are generated from the founder's shares that are contributed to the house will be donated to charity, Decency for Humanity. So Decent Charity for Humanity. I thought it was a little clever because it's decency for humanity, which is what our goal is. We want, we want decency for humanity. Everybody deserves a decent life. Pun intended. So that's what we're going to launch a charity, and that's where the funds will go. I will say, and it's something we will involve the community in, is if we get to the point based on the inflation of Ethereum where we have an excess of operating capital, then we will donate that excess of operating capital to charity. And we're getting to the point where there's a large amount of value in the Ethereum we hold, and I would love to take I want to make sure we're being responsible and using operating capital for operating capital. But if there's an excess and everybody's in agreement, the majority of the DBET holders are in agreement that we want to make a change, not just in our lives, but in other people's lives as well. I'd love to take $100,000 of our operating capital and donate it to charity. Let's go to Africa and give drinking water to tribes that don't have the ability to even have clean drinking water. Let's support veterans. Thank you. I'm so glad that was the response you guys had, because it's a fine line to walk to say, we invested this money for operating capital, and everyone did invest this money for operating capital, but now, who would have known Ethereum at ICO was $273 and now it's $1,000 a piece. Our raise has quadrupled, and we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't have a crystal ball, but now there is this excess, and it gives us the opportunity to build the platform bigger and better than we ever intended. But at some point, when I say that all ICOs should be capped, is your operating budget is your operating budget. What the heck do you need the excess for? Why do you need $200 million in an ICO raise? How could you ever spend that? Plus the $200 million plus inflation. How could you ever spend that? Where does all this money go? And it tends to go to salaries of the executives of the company. We don't want bigger salaries. We want to give that money to charity. And I'm so glad that's the response that you guys had. Let's go make a change in the world. And if there's excess, aside from the 10% that would be donated from the profits, I don't want to bump in salary. I want to go change someone's life. And
just to echo that, you see some of these platforms, and I'm not out to talk about other platforms, but you see the amount of capital they're trying to raise. We're a bunch of guys that created this in Vegas, and we invested a bunch of money ourselves to build the platform before ICO. So we know what it takes, right, to get it to X. Then we worked out, well, let's multiply that by X, and that's how much operating capital we're going to need to get from here to here.
Yeah, we wanted to give ourselves like an 8-year operating budget. So we ran our budget based on the developers we needed, the operating capital, the marketing expenses. We came up with the figure $25 million. That's what we needed to build the platform. Now we've created other opportunities that the strategy to accept fiat on the platform is not cheap. It's can't give the sauce away, but it's an expensive avenue that we didn't originally anticipate going through. The acquisition of the two companies with this unique gaming IP that wasn't part of the original plan, but now the inflation of Ethereum has allowed us to do more for the platform. But 25 million was the original number. Sorry to interject, but 25 million was the original number. Now that number has increased and created more opportunities for the platform, more value back to the investors. But at some point, to be honest, it's just more than we need. And
So I ask you to think outside the box when you're investing in other companies. Why are they asking for so much money? What value are they trying to create with like these ridiculous amounts of money? But I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, so the last thing we want to touch on is Japanese marketing. So we're very bullish in Japan.
Yeah.
They're very bullish on us. There's constant communication. We have a Japanese team that work.
Blockchain Labo, if you're watching this video, we love you.
Ak and
you guys
Charlie.
have been amazing to us. Ak, Charlie, Jay, you guys have been amazing. We have great partners in Japan, along with some other strategic partners that have emerged by being in Japan. So we're in the midst of creating a Japanese Facebook page where all of the marketing material that we create, from first off the foundation of the page, the about us, the banner, everything will be translated to Japanese. And then every piece of marketing that Chris Chris's genius creates would be translated into Japanese as well and shared on that Japanese Facebook page to make sure that we're catering to those communities and giving them updates like the way that we're updating you guys today. We want to be able to make sure that everybody, especially our key markets, have those updates as well. So we're investing in building a whole team in Japan, translators, community managers, people that are identifying key influencers, people that are introducing us to Japanese exchanges, et cetera, to make sure we cater to those markets. It's something we're really excited about because the Japanese are so bullish and they've been so in love with the DBAT business model.
You also got to understand how long this takes because none of them speak English and we don't speak Japanese.
It's not easy.
Joking.
It's not easy. All kidding aside, we're blessed to have the opportunities, but it's something that's new to us, something that we aren't fluent in, something we're not accustomed to, and structuring processes and business models to make sure things aren't lost in translation isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. So it takes an investment of time and effort, and I don't know how many people are involved in Slack. If you go back 2-3 months ago, I was in Slack every minute of every day. It felt like I lived in Slack, and you'll probably see less and less of me in Slack and less of Kurt and Chris and Sven and some of the key operators of the company in Slack, because we have so many moving pieces, working with Perkins Coie, figuring out the fiat, figuring out the licenses, the formation, the Japanese plan, the acquisitions, et cetera. We have a great community support team in place that can answer all those questions and make sure everything that you guys need is attended to, and they're readily available consistently. But I apologize if I'm less responsive than I was 2 months ago, but it's in our house is your house. It's in our best interest that we're focusing on very high level items, and that the time that the key people are using, that's being spent in the things that are most impactful to the platform. And right now, with the business positioning, getting ready for the launch of the casino, there's a lot of high-level items that require our attention 24 hours a day. Our lawyers are in Pacific Standard Time. We literally went to Michael Jackson Thriller last night, got out of Michael Jackson Thriller, and ran home 11 p.m. to have a call with the lawyers because it was 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in the United States. We're up from sun up to sundown, taking calls at 11 p.m. I didn't get to bed till 4 a.m. last night with a meetup coming today, because that's what we had to do to speak with the lawyers, just based on time zone. Then you look at the time zone difference between us and Tokyo. You don't even want to know the hours that we've had phone calls with our partners in Tokyo, just based on the time difference. But if it offers value back to the investors, there is nothing in this world that I won't do and these guys won't do to add value. If it adds value, we will be up at any hour of any day and do what's needed to be done to provide as much value back to the platform as we can. So please be patient and understanding that if we're not as responsive attending as we used to be, it's because the business is evolving and we need to make sure these high-level items are covered. So whatever, that's my tangent. Sorry.
So that basically wraps up our presentation. I think that I feel comfortable that we've covered a fair lot here. We've answered some questions.
Any other questions?
If you do have any other questions, please shout out. We've got the desk for a question. But we are gonna transition from questions into the slots. We're gonna have a look at that, and then we've only got this room for a little more, a bit more time, and then we're gonna go for a couple of beers. If you guys are around, we can chat, have a beer, and you can ask us some more questions. Yeah, we'll be hanging around. I would love some personal chat.
Favorite cards, your favorite charities, whatever.
Go for it.
Can I ask you about the fiat? Because if your business model is, we are the house, then you can, in a way, part of it's the increase in the value of the DBET token, but that surely can't be applied if it's fiat. And can you say anything about that, or is that confidential?
So you're talking about the value of the token.
No, if people are going to use your platform with fiat, how are you going to monetize that? Because is it a different part of the business model?
No, we would convert the fiat profits to DBET tokens, which would create all of the fiat all the profits that were generated with fiat would then be infused into the marketplace to buy more DBETs to distribute back to the fund holders. Do you understand?
So you know how you put your money into a stock machine, it gives you the credit.
Yeah.
Sorry. So the money would come into the bank. So I don't want to go into too much detail. Money comes into the bank, and you'd be credited on the platform.
So yeah, that's where we it's new to us, so we haven't worked out every detail. So one of the things that we've spoken about recently internally is, when does the conversion of fiat to DBET happen? Does it happen at the end of the session, where we say, okay, now we're at the end of the session, this much profits have been generated from the DBET gamblers, this much profit has been generated from the fiat, now let's convert all that fiat to DBET and create more demand for DBET tokens, because we have to convert all of that fiat into DBET, then do the distribution to all of fiat, so we have fiat to pay out the fiat winnings as they win? Or do we do it in real time?
Do you want to ask another question?
It's a little complicated, but we're working through the kinks. The good news is that fiat infuses all this additional capital, that at the very least the profits are all being converted into DBETs, which, you know, we can go at the end of the quarter, hypothetically, there's $500,000 in DBET or in fiat profits. We can convert all of that into that fiat profits into DBET tokens, infusing $500,000 into the DBET market, which is going to drive the price and add value back to the DBET token. And the value of holding DBETs are, you can never be the house with fiat. You can only be the house with DBET. So the exclusivity for the DBET community specifically is that's the only way to be the house. But the fiat is adding value back into the DBET community. Yeah, right here.
So do you see it like being 95% of traffic will be fiat, and the community will be the other 5% who'll be holding their coins with you? But you need these punters. Not everyone can win. For the community to win, the players need to lose to generate money. So is that how you're looking at it? How much traffic do you want who don't really understand DBET, that they can make money out of it, that they're there just to gamble? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, we have thought about that. It seems like the majority of DBET holders are more interested in being the house than gambling. So that's where the question, I believe, is this gentleman asked, if all the DBET tokens were locked up, hypothetically, what would you do? Then we would bring Ethereum. Well, so there's two scenarios, and we touched on this briefly, is we can either accept fiat or we can't. If we can accept fiat, then we have the whole world, right, to bring on as users. If we can't, then we'd go for the low-hanging fruit first, would be getting the people that are familiar with crypto to adopt the platform. People that are familiar with crypto that are gamblers to adopt the platform. The secondary and bigger challenge would be converting people that aren't familiar with crypto to use the platform. I believe it was this gentleman that asked what would be the motivation for them to use it. It would be the transparency in the odds, the probability fair transparency and verifiability. Plus, if they do make the conversion to crypto, then they can be the house, which traditional casinos don't offer. So if you're a traditional gambler, I can offer you fair, verifiable odds. Plus, I could create an opportunity that's unattainable anywhere else in the world, is you can actually be the house as well.
Would the sportsbook be any different to other sportsbooks in terms of like odds verification? Transparency?
Well, I mean, sportsbook is easy because the winner is the winner is the winner is the winner, right? How we'll compete from a sportsbook perspective, we're going to offer -105 odds. That's American odds. I know the English odds are slightly different, but for traditional American odds, it's -110, which means you're paying roughly a 10% fee, where we'd offer a 5% fee. So it'd be 50% less fees than traditional sports books, which, yeah. So that would be the attraction, correct. and you can be the house.
Any more big questions? No joke. All jokes aside,
Thank you guys so much.
Jed will talk all night if you let him to, and I'm scared of it.
Someone shut me out, please. So I'll run through a quick, what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring, is it this laptop that's connected? Let's clear a little room, and we're going to ask you to enter in your email and your name before you enter into the slot machine. The reason is, once to distribute your winnings, what we're going to do is we're going to capture your email, which is going to directly correspond with your winnings. So we're going to know which email won how much.